Alright guys, I'm going to cut right to the chase. What is the best soil for citrus trees? In our subtropical climate here in North Carolina, zone 7B or 8A, our best soil mix has been topsoil. That's it, topsoil. We order it in bulk by the cubic yard. I think we paid, it was less than $80 for 2 cubic feet of topsoil delivered here, and we've been planting everything in it, all of our fruit trees, especially all of our citrus trees, and it's been doing fantastic. This pomelo, this Chinese pomelo from Stan, was just recently uppotted. This was a rooted cutting from the winter. It took forever to root, and we just put it here in our topsoil mix with just a little bit of compost added in because we had it, but that is not necessary. Topsoil alone has been our most successful mix. Now it's a little different for plants that we ship. Like this here is a pomelo seedling grafted with kumquat. It may eventually be for sale, or I may develop more feelings and feel too attached to it to sell it. But we're growing this in a 50% perlite, and the other 50% is a mixture of peat moss, sand, compost, things of that nature. And all that perlite and peat moss make this a lot lighter and easier to ship, and it's actually still a half decent mix. Going 50% perlite or 50% sand and the rest some sort of peat moss mix, or you could take a bag of Miracle-Gro and mix it 50-50 with sand, and it's a whole lot better than all these other citrus mixes that we've personally tried. So in our experience, I didn't like the results of 511. I didn't like Miracle-Gro citrus cactus mix, although it's not half bad in the beginning. A lot of the mixes aren't bad initially, but managing the moisture and all the organic matter in those mixes tends to degrade and have a negative impact on these plants. These plants like mineral-based soils, so think sand, think clay, think perlite, think vermiculite, all of those different things in the right ratios. Now topsoil, having been made by nature, it's already at a really nice ratio. The topsoil we have available to us, it's like a nice sandy loam, and it's perfect for citrus here. Your topsoil might be a little different, but I found, generally speaking, this has worked really well for a few reasons. One, it's mineral-based. Two, you don't have to water it often, so it holds moisture well, but it doesn't hold too much moisture. So some of these peat moss mixes can hold too much moisture and then dry out too quickly simultaneously. You have both problems. It can over and under water your plants depending. Especially in hot temperatures where you're constantly cycling between wet and dry, it can be stressful for these plants. And we actually noticed that a lot with the 511 mix. At least where we are and with how this summer has been, it's simply way too hot to use those really free draining mixes and use those more organic mixes. I've had a lot better results planting everything in topsoil, including our potted plants. Now you might be wondering, of course, well, if I plant everything in topsoil, it's going to weigh 100 pounds. And you know what? It is heavy. This is a 2-gallon fabric pot. This is a 5-star citrumello, I believe, that is going in the ground. And these pots weigh a lot. They're like 10 to 20 pounds, something like that. Maybe more on the 10 side, but even then, they're pretty darn heavy for their size. And even the small little pot here, it weighs a few pounds. It has a lot of weight to it. So if you don't like heavy pots, this may not be good for you. You may be better off making your own mix with predominantly perlite, sands, vermiculite, and something to hold on to the moisture. And then from there, you will just have to supplement with nutrition. The topsoil already has a lot of nutrition in it. We will still feed these plants a little bit, but for the most part, we can just top them with compost and mulch, let that break down, let the rain water it in, and they're good. They don't need fertilizer. And they're growing extremely vigorously. I mean, this is a small plant. That's not even the best example. But I have tons over here that I've grafted, and they're doing really, really well in this mix, and they perked up as soon as I put them in it compared to when they've been sitting in the peat moss blends that they were in. So it makes a huge difference, and it really helps that these hold on to their moisture evenly. That's a very important aspect. So it doesn't overwater them, but it doesn't underwater them. It keeps them at an even moisture, and it's easy to water them. You can easily tell whether or not this is wet or dry. You could just fill it up a little bit, let it soak in, forget about it for a couple weeks, depending on your climate. If it's cooler, you won't have to water this much at all. But it is worth testing, because in your climate, it may be just a little different than it is here. But I gotta say, if you live in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, you might have a lot of luck with this, because I certainly have, and I wouldn't go back to any of the organic soil mixes, especially when you consider cost. If I bought 2 cubic yards of Miracle-Gro citrus cactus mix or whatever, 1, it wouldn't really work for our application here in ground anyway, but 2, it would be insanely expensive, whereas I paid, again, $80 or less to have it delivered here. So that is incredible. It's just heavy. So again, weigh that out, see what you think. But that mix has been really good for us. I think it's a great citrus mix, and I think you can do a lot of similar things. Just keep in mind mineral-based soil. Whatever mix you're going with, make sure it's more rocks than it is wood chips. And if you have that concept down, you will have a lot of success with your citrus from there. You will learn how to water these things correctly because they will dry out more naturally, even in the pots. And then you can worry about other things like pruning and sunlight and nutrients and all that stuff. But it's a lot easier. Everything else becomes a lot easier once you manage the root system and the soil with citrus. That's the hardest thing that I personally had to deal with. 1, make sure they get enough sunlight, of course, always. Although these plants have been in 50% shade and they're growing beautifully, flowering and fruiting too. So keep that in mind. Partial shade is fine for citrus. Just make sure they get some sort of sunlight, some good quality sunlight. And if you're growing them indoors, make sure they're in a south-facing window or give them supplemental light with a grow light. But they will do really well for you if you get all those things down. Things become a lot easier. Root rot is probably one of the #1 reasons people struggle with citrus or give up on citrus. And I'm telling you, plenty of times I thought I just wasn't cut out to grow these plants. And here we are, we have a nursery specializing in citrus. I can't believe how far we've come. But we've learned a lot along the way. So if you have any questions about this, please feel free to ask. Again, results may vary. But here, this mix has done really well. And again, that kind of man-made mix that we make for our plants that we're shipping, this does really well too. You might have to change it out a bit more. Just make sure you supplement with nutrients. These will need nitrogen and potassium and all the smaller micronutrients as well, all the different elements. So I hope this is helpful to you guys. Try it out. See if your luck with citrus changes entirely. It sure did for us. And I'll see you guys next time.